Now that you're familiar with the fundamentals of the JavaScript language, and before moving on, we need to quickly talk about JavaScript versions, okay? Now I could have probably talked about this right at the beginning of the course, but I just wanted to have you writing some code as fast as possible. Anyway, it's very important to talk about JavaScript versions because that's just something that every modern JavaScript developer should be aware of. And also because you will see these topics coming up in the developer community all the time. And so you want to be able to understand what's going on. So in order to do that, let's just very briefly talk about the history of JavaScript. So JavaScript was first released and called LiveScript in 1995, so a long time ago. But the name was then very quickly changed to JavaScript. And the reason for the change was just to attract developers of another language that was very popular at the time, and that's Java. So the Java in JavaScript was just for marketing reasons really, because the language itself has almost nothing to do with Java. Some beginners think that this is the case, but no, JavaScript and Java are actually two completely different languages. Now, 1 year later, the language was submitted to an organization called ECMA International in order to create a new standard. And so ECMAScript 1, or ES1, became the first version of the JavaScript language. In the real world, we usually use the term ECMAScript to refer to the standard, while JavaScript is used when we talk about the language in practice. Now, fast forward to 2009, ES5 was released with a lot of new features. However, it took many years for browsers to implement all these changes. And finally, the much awaited new version ES6 was launched in June 2015. And it was the biggest update to the language ever with a ton of new features. And this was, or still is, a really big deal for JavaScript and for the whole developer community. Now you will also see ES6 being called ES2015, which is actually the official name, but most people just call it ES6, and so that's what I'm going to do here as well. And actually the reason for ES6 being called ES2015 is that in 2015 we changed to an annual release cycle. So a new version of the language is now released every year with just a few new features per year, instead of shipping a huge new version every couple of years. So this way, it's much easier for everyone to keep up to date, okay? So it's much easier for us developers like this. And so in 2016, ES2016 or ES7 was released, ES2017 in 2017, and like this, it will continue into the future. So what does JavaScript look like today, and which version should and can we use? So first off, ES5 is of course fully supported in all browsers today, and so that's the one that is safe to be used. Now about the newer versions ES6, ES7 and ES8, as of mid-2018, they are all actually quite well supported in all modern browsers. But the problem with this is that we can't just assume that our users use these modern browsers, at least not all of them. And the old browsers will of course not understand the ES6 syntax at all, and neither the ES7 and ES8 and so on and so forth. And so these old browsers are a big problem for us. Now the solution to this problem is to basically convert these modern JavaScript versions back to ES5 using a process called transpiling and also polyfilling. And I'm going to teach you how to do that by the end of the course, okay? And if you want to stay up to date with what features are currently supported in which browser, you can just check out the ES6 compatibility table, and the link is on my resources page. Next up, there are the future versions of the language like ES9, ES10 and so on. And these future versions together are many times called ES Next. Now some features of these future versions are actually already implemented in some browsers, and so you could use them by transpiling and polyfilling your code today. But to be honest, I wouldn't really advise you to do so at this point, because I believe that ES6, ES7 and ES8 together are powerful enough to bring the JavaScript development experience to a whole new level already, as you will see a bit later in the course, alright? So in this course, we're going to start by using ES5 in the first part of the course, and then move to ES6 plus, so ES6, ES7 and ES8 in the second part of the course, okay? And so here's how that's going to work. So we already talked about the JavaScript fundamentals using ES5, and we will continue using ES5 to look behind the scenes of JavaScript, do some DOM manipulations, learn all about objects and functions, and code up a huge real project. From there, we will then start using ES6 with an overview of what's new in the language. Then we're going to talk about asynchronous JavaScript, modern development setups, and code an even bigger and cooler real-world app, all using ES6, ES7, and ES8. Alright? Now, some people don't understand why I even bother showing you ES5 in this course at all, and actually have criticized me for doing so. And so here are a few reasons which I hope will make sense to you. So I truly believe that in 2018 and even 2019, it's still a good idea to learn the fundamentals of JavaScript in ES5 and then move to newer JavaScript versions from there, simply due to the fact that you will always have to understand ES5 in the future. And that is because many tutorials and example code that you will find online are still written in ES5 today. Plus, as a developer, sometimes you will have to work on older code bases, which will most certainly be written in ES5 or even older. And all in all, I just believe that you will be a better developer if you start understanding how ES5 works and only then move up to ES6 or newer, because ES6 has some abstractions like classes that kind of hide how the language actually works behind the scenes. Alright, so I hope that this makes a lot of sense to you. And so let's now move on right to the next section.